Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Markwayne Mullin doesn't just drop a tactical nuke of a truth bomb here, he makes Kaitlan Collins and pretty much the entire legislative branch look like complete tools for what they're doing to beat Hegseth. Let's dive in.
I was in that room today, and when you said that, I guess the thought that went through my head was, if what you're saying is true and your colleagues do show up drinking to come to work and vote, which I think would maybe be concerning to those taxpayers who pay them, how is the bad behavior of a sitting senator a defense of someone who wants to run the Pentagon?
It's not. What they were saying is he was incapable of doing his job. And Kaitlan, what I was trying to get to is if you're capable of doing your job and you're able to still drink on the job or late in the evening, then don't tell me that Pete can't. And Pete had already said he's not going to drink, but they just kept hammering it. Pete is qualified to do the job. He's a combat veteran. He's 20-year combat veteran. He's been under fire. He's pulled his own friends out of a combat zone. He's had to bury his own friends that's got killed in combat. The guy has bled, he has sweat, and he has proven his ability for his love for this country. He will do what needs to be done. What's the definition of insanity? Is doing the same thing, expecting different results, and we keep recycling the same type of people as the Secretary of Defense. And where have they got us? Nowhere. President Trump is wanting to put people in the place that's going to shake things up and do things different, and Pete Hegseth is going to do that.
The drinking, I mean, it wasn't just that he had a glass of wine. There were allegations from his former colleagues about him going out to strip clubs or having to be escorted out of parties because he had too much to drink. He denied that. But I'm just saying those were the allegations. It wasn't just that he was seen at Cafe Milano.
Keep in mind that every one of them's been anonymous tips. No one's come forward and actually said this.
Well, Senator Tim Kaine said today that you guys
question,
did have the names of
we
these
haven't
people
seen the
who
names.
have
I haven't seen the names. They sure didn't. They sure didn't mention the names. They said they had one person, one name that had said that. Pete has been adamant from day one that it is an outright lie. Now, if no one's willing to put their name on it and no one's willing to come forth on it, and believe me, they had plenty of time to come forth. They've all known this. Then all it is a smear campaign, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, and on the other part of the hearing that really focused on him being qualified for the job, in addition to the allegations made against him, one of the questions he was asked at the end there from Alyssa Slotkin, one of your newest colleagues, was if he would decline to carry out an illegal order if he was given one. And she was saying it's not just about President Trump, but it's about any president. If that was the case, should you decline to do so? He would not just say yes to that. Did that bother you or give you any pause?
He had been very consistent throughout the entire hearing, saying, I'm not answering hypothetical questions.
But it's not really a hypothetical because Mark Esper was in that position, and he felt like he got orders that he, when it came to politicizing the military. It seemed like a non-answer.
It was a very hypothetical question. And that's what they kept, all the Democrats kept trying to have hypothetical questions of what if, what if, what if. You don't know all the circumstances behind a what if. It's not cut and dry. It's when someone has to make an in-the-moment decision, there's a lot of factors that go in play at that time. And so a hypothetical question in that type of atmosphere is something you cannot answer.
Shouldn't that answer always be, yes, I would refuse to carry that out?
What he kept saying is he said, I'm going to follow the Constitution. He kept going back to, I'm going to follow the Constitution. That is about as straightforward as he can. Without answering the hypothetical, he always said that he will follow the Constitution of the United States of America. What else do you want? He's going to raise his hand and swear up to uphold the Constitution of the United States.
That's the only answer in these hypothetical situations. It's like asking a kid, what happens if someone offers you drugs? What is the kid supposed to say there? The kid's always supposed to say no, but we know darn well in 10 years when he becomes a teenager and makes stupid decisions, yeah, that's not a smart question to ask. The question you should be asking is Pete Hegseth in recovery? How has he been doing since he's promised to put down the bottle? And how competent is he at his other jobs? The Democrat senators won't ask these questions, okay? Kaitlan Collins won't ask these questions because Pete Hegseth has his name tied to Donald Trump, and because of that, they're going to sling him into the mud. They are going to clutch their pearls, and they're going to wonder, how could have this possibly happened? Pete Hegseth, he drinks. Folks, if you're in D.C., and unfortunately I fell prey to this, you drink like a sailor, and then you drink like a sailor who thinks that he is being a Marine, okay? The alcohol flows in that town, and it's not a joke. It's a huge problem. And that's been a problem pretty much wherever I've gone in politics. But if you've been to some of the parties out in Frankfort, Kentucky, the bourbon flows. Okay, so you at least get something good there. Not quite the case in D.C. But yeah, D.C. is it's a drinking town. And so that's going to be a natural pitfall. And that's something that you should ask yourself, is this a good idea for someone to be running the Department of Defense who is going to have to live in D.C. or in Northern Virginia, which is a little bit drier? And if you're going to run the Department of Defense, how good are you going to be at your job? If you're a lush, well, I've got some questions. But instead of framing the question of in the form of, okay, how long has it been since your last drink? How competent have you been sober? And I'd really like to see an example of you when under the influence. Those are good questions to ask someone when they're going to be coming into a major position, particularly in Pete Hegseth's case, when it comes to the Secretary of Defense. But instead of asking those questions, it's a bunch of pearl clutching. The Democrats have framed this question of, well, what happens if the president orders you to invade Greenland? Give me a break. First off, senators, they're the ones that declare war. Okay? They're the ones that can draft a resolution that says, hey, President, we're giving you powers to go and have a military action instead of actually declaring war and having the testicular fortitude to actually say, hey, we really need to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to officially declare it. And instead, they just kind of go, we're going to give you some undefined powers and we'll figure it out later. We're going to let you take the fall while we look like the righteous people who aren't actually going to war. That's sort of the despicable side of the Senate. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a bit of a Senate snob. I prefer the Senate to the House. The House is where all the crazy stuff goes. That's where the budget goes. But the Senate is where the important stuff gets decided. Because the Senate says who's going to be in the cabinet, who's going to be on the Supreme Court, and who's going to be in federal positions, particularly federal judicial positions. That's where more power lies. And so, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more drawn to the Senate, but I had to constantly turn off the live stream from hearing the insipid nonsense that kept pouring out of Democrats, particularly Democrat women, because instead of asking tough questions, they were asking all these weird hypotheticals that probably won't ever happen, when the answer is simply put, I'm going to do what the Constitution says. That's going to be part of my job. What a stupid question. Can you please give me something more relevant? And also, they constantly harped on the idea that, oh, women shouldn't serve in combat positions? Well, probably not. Let's be honest, for the same reason that men shouldn't compete in women's sports, men have a more physiological advantage here. Plus, we have that evolutionary background of quite literally having to hunt to survive. So it's a little bit more in male DNA than it is in female DNA here, okay? Let's be a little bit honest when we're talking about that. But instead of asking real questions, instead of trying to ask about the competency of Pete Hegseth, you had these Democrats just clutching their pearls, and that's what Kaitlan Collins is doing here. That's why Markwayne Mullin went out of pocket for a moment and reminded half the senators there, hey, I have seen you drunk. I know who cheats on the other. Why are we asking these stupid, insipid questions? You're asking about competency here. This is why I love bringing up the Patton incident, where he slaps a soldier. Instead of firing him, Eisenhower had the wherewithal to hold him in reserve because the Germans took one look at Patton and they did the same thing that the British did when they looked at George Washington. They wet themselves and ran for the hills because they knew competency when they saw it, and they feared it like no other. Our enemies are afraid of a competent America. I believe Pete Hegseth will bring that to the Department of Defense. I believe Trump is going to bring that back into office. And that's what these Democrats fear, because Democrats can't govern. And these Democrats, particularly these Democrat senator women, these folks are afraid that if competency is shown to the American people, the Democrat Party will never get power again. And that's because, well, simply put, Democrats just can't govern. It's really that easy. So Markwayne Mullin is addressing this as nice as he can, but y'all, Kaitlan Collins, she ain't it. These Democrat women like Elizabeth Warren, there's a couple of others. Oh, I had that brought up, but I accidentally deleted it. But there's a couple of great clips out there just showing these insipid, ridiculous questions, all coming from Democrat women. And bless their hearts, they're trying their best, but the Democrats aren't sending us their best. At least not anymore. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.